Welcome to our second installment of Legal AI Demo Days. We're very excited to talk about law firm client collaboration, which is a great for this group where we have representations of both law firms and clients in the crowd. We want to thank again our friends at Legal Ops and at Legal Tech Hub for collaborating with us on this. The purpose of this meeting is just to bring the community together, to take one use case at a time, and to see several examples of how different vendors approach it. So we have the shared conversation. At the end of the demos, Nikki is going to talk about some of the guiding principles when people tried to solve for this problem, what to think about. And then we're going to ask the vendors to leave, and we just want to have we're going to stop recording, and we're going to have an honest conversation about the key things you need to think about when you solve this problem. We have a few upcoming events for those of you who haven't registered yet for all of those. So we have a few more of the series. We're going to continue going with the series until just before ILTA in the summer, but we only announced the first couple of months. And then there's in person on March 11. We're going to do a workshop day when it's going to be, it's not going to be lecture, it's going to be a lot of table works and working with colleagues about the following topics you see on the screen. So that's March 11. You could register at skills.law, and March 12, just for the people who lead knowledge, innovation, transformation at law firms are getting together the next day. With that, I just want to remind everyone the conversation, we do expect to follow the Chatham House rule. It's a single rule, what happens in Chatham. So don't quote anyone without their permission, please. And without further ado, we're going to start the first demo.
If you're still managing legal work on email, Word, and Excel, this is you. Sure, you get your work done, but managing complex matters doesn't have to be so disorganized and unpredictable. At least not anymore. Introducing Project Fortress, the legal operating system for complex matters, where work streams, documents, tasks, and issues all come together. Clearly organized, structured, and actually manageable. Fortress is powered by Salesforce, delivering enterprise-grade security, scalability, and reliability, tailored specifically for legal teams. Because Fortress is built on Salesforce, it doesn't replace your tech stack. It connects it. Document management, email, Slack, Microsoft, data, all working together in one place. One source of truth where legal teams and their clients collaborate in real time around the work itself. Fortress takes a platform-first approach, with AI layered on top. Because AI only delivers real value when it's grounded in structured legal work, not as a point solution. From document analysis, to research, to drafting, Fortress AI works directly inside the matter. And because the work happens on the platform, the data structures itself, powering rich dashboards, real-time insights, and actionable intelligence. Now, let's see what this looks like in practice. As a legal team collaborates with their client in Fortress on an issues list for a deal closing soon. On our homepage, let's click Project Gold. The Project Gold workspace contains everything related to this matter. The closing checklist, the matter team, Slack feeds, integrated document management, and AI sitting on top to push things along. Let's open the purchase agreement workspace. It looks like we just got a message from a member of the team. Let's respond in the feed and use this information as we prepare the issues list on the distribution agreement that just came in. This is a new closing condition, so let's add it to the checklist. We can link the draft via iManage, NetDocuments, or SharePoint once it's ready. In the meantime, let's create a new workspace. This is where we'll manage all the work and communications regarding the agreement. In the feed, let's send an external email to the client lead about the distribution agreement draft. We'll post the issues list right here on the workspace for the client to review. Fortress AI lives inside our workspaces. Let's click the issues list generator and upload the vendor's red line. Next, let's provide some context. We represent customer here, and we only want material issues in this review. Issues appear in real time as AI reviews the red line. As it processes, we can use these quick action buttons to prepare market analysis and client recommendations for each issue, which we'll share with the client in the agreement workspace. These recommendations are client-specific. They pull from precedent knowledge bases in the platform. Once this is complete, we navigate back to the issues list for the distribution agreement and insert the draft. This editor is linked to iManage, NetDocuments, and SharePoint for seamless document management. Let's tag the client in a post to let them know they can review the draft. Fortress provides customizable client portals with real-time access to matters and data, including direct connections to client Salesforce environments. Practice-specific dashboards surface structured firm data that's instantly shareable in negotiations. And with Fortress AI embedded at the platform level, negotiation agents operate as true matter-aware experts. Our philosophy is that for AI to really work, it needs to be embedded directly where the work happens. Not a Word or Outlook add-in, not a chatbot you log into separately. Rather, a layer that sits directly on top of your operating system where people work. That's the key to true client collaboration. All the work happens in workspaces over here, while Slack and Chatter feeds manage the internal communications over there. The results are overwhelming. Over 80% reduction in email traffic, less noise, and a seamless connection between the messy world you once knew and this brave new world where one system organizes your life. Join Project Fortress today and see for yourself the power of investing in a real platform.
Jump right into it. So it seems to be maybe the last thing I see in the video that's sparking my largest curiosity, but we're seeing like comments going back and forth right in the portal. And how should law firms be thinking about annotations in that portal that could be considered work product? Even more so, and I don't know if this is something that's in Fortress, but I would let's say the client has the license, and how are law firms preserving the advice and work product we're delivering to the clients in this new world?
Yeah, so to take a step back, and maybe by way of introduction, Colin Steffen, founder and CEO of Project Fortress. Again, thanks for having me. So to your point about how this works with respect to clients who are logging into a Fortress instance controlled by a law firm and engaging on a matter alongside the legal team, the idea is that by creating a single ecosystem where this work happens, we can pull in document management, we can integrate Slack directly, and then within those workspaces that you saw in that video, a lot of those channels where that work is happening can also be external channels linked to client Slack accounts. Now, sure, not everyone has Slack, and Slack is relatively new to the legal world. However, because this is all powered by Salesforce, Salesforce native feeds on each one of these workspaces that you just saw do provide access on the client side. So there's this idea of an internal user who's internal to the organization, Fortress, and then an external user who can get onto those chatter feeds and provide input. So your question about work product, the good thing about having a system designed this deeply around Salesforce infrastructure is that when there is work product in a feed, like what you saw, that work product, you have the ability to either make it visible externally to a client user or make it internal eyes only. By default, everything that's shared within the platform is internal eyes only, unless and until a law firm user switches the toggle on the feed so that it can be externally visible to a client who is on the matter.
So you're selling directly to law firms, you're not selling to in-house?
Both, certainly both. And the perspective that you just saw today was from the perspective of a law firm sharing with an in-house client, but the reverse is equally true. And we've had many use cases of that working, frankly, better, mainly because of how in-house already thinks about managing many outside relationships naturally. The idea is that Fortress becomes a hub at least on the law firm side, where all the matters are managed, and then they can invite obviously client leads to engage from a business perspective. But the reverse is equally true. If you're a large Fortune 500 company and you've got a panel of 15, outside counsels, instead of having to create 15 separate systems for engaging with each of those firms, you can invite them into your ecosystem on Salesforce, which is already connected to corporate development and integration and operations, where they can kind of play within your playground.
And so one of the unique properties of Fortress is that it's built on Salesforce. Can you talk on the pros and cons of that? What are some of the non-obvious advantages that Salesforce have? You touched on some of those, but there are probably some things that we don't even know about. And then I'm going to imagine there's limitations as well. So you can talk about, what that cost benefit sort of analysis was when you were starting Fortress and how you came to that conclusion.
Absolutely. That's a great question. Initially, and I'll be totally honest with you, when we set out to build a platform to try to consolidate all these workflows, we didn't want to hitch our wagon to like a Salesforce. But as we learned more about the Salesforce business model, especially on the partner side, what we learned is that there's a reason why Salesforce is a $200 billion market cap company that's been around for 25 years. And it's because they've created an infrastructure that everyone from Coca-Cola to the Department of Defense can use as infrastructure, not just for security, but for just managing operations at a very sophisticated level. The advantages are I think, pretty obvious. Number one, it's the infrastructure support, it's the security, it's the fact that, basically, half the Fortune 500 uses Salesforce in some capacity, including the public sector as well. So you have the seal of approval from a security perspective. The other thing is that it's basically infinitely integratable. You saw, Salesforce owns Slack. So as far as communications goes, Salesforce is really good at managing internal and external communications. The ecosystem surrounding the Salesforce App Exchange gives you the ability to integrate your entire tech stack. And because it's Salesforce at the bottom of Fortress, we're able to customize on an organization by organization basis. Like if you use DocuSign, we can integrate DocuSign. If you use SharePoint instead of NetDocs or instead of iManage, like it's all kind of a plug and play, because the Salesforce infrastructure at the bottom of Fortress is kind of the engine that allows all of this to work. Drawbacks, I know a lot of people are wondering, does the client or does outside counsel have to have their own separate instance of Salesforce? Like, does Salesforce have to be involved in this process? And the answer is no. We are a Salesforce partner, and by virtue of being a partner, we are essentially the face of Salesforce as it relates to Fortress. Fortress is the application layer of Salesforce. We're selling you a car. Salesforce is the engine. You don't really buy your engine separate from your car.
Yep. Got it. And so I'm told we're at time. There's a couple questions waiting for you in the chat, but it's been nice chatting with you, Colin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And last but not least, we have the Harvey team.
Hi, I'm Ryan Sammy, Head of Product Innovation at Harvey. We want to thank the Skills team for having us on board today to showcase to you what we think is going to be one of the most important features we develop here in 2026. Harvey's shared space is one of those classic stories of the market has asked and now we have answered. We were fielding requests from both the law firm side of the market along with the client side of the market for a feature that allowed collaborative work to happen. And we were finding that this had been a desire in the legal ecosystem that predates Gen AI, but feels most meaningful now as law firms and clients are starting to work together with AI. As we've gone and had these conversations with law firms, asset managers, Fortune 500 companies, we consistently see that there are a few layers of value here. First, there's a shared data repository story. That might not feel super new, but we're still seeing value at that moment of the workflow. Going up from there, we see that a lot of law firms are now creating AI output downstream of that data. It could be a structured library of insights from deal documents. It could be a draft document. Usually it's something that the law firm is creating and then verifying. Well, now they might want to socialize that for their client so the client can go query it in real time in a collaborative space. Last but not least is the ability for law firms to build bespoke workflows or tools that they might want to deploy to clients for the client's consumption to do end-to-end legal work in a more self-service way where the law firm will still have the right ability to have visibility and to escalate when necessary. With all that said, I'll kick it over to my colleague Maddie, who will show us what a shared space entails and walk us through a couple workflows.
First of all, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Maddie. I am a legal engineer at Harvey, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm a former practicing lawyer turned current Harvey product expert. So my background is actually in venture capital and startup work. And that's why I've put together this particular shared space today. This is emblematic of a shared space between a startup, in this case, Lumeo Corporation, and their outside counsel, in this case, ScalePoint Law. I would have loved to have access to this type of tool when I was a practicing attorney. You can see in this shared space, all of these little tiles either represent document repositories, large scale folders containing all sorts of documents, or various tools that can either be used by the law firm or the company, kind of based on what work product needs to be created and what analysis needs to be done. Here under this data tab, you'll see various different folders covering all sorts of documents that startups need to use and draft throughout the course of their life cycle. Here you can see we've got financing documents that might be kind of emblematic of a recent fundraising round. We have a data room that could have been utilized for diligence purposes in that round. And then we've also got various folders containing the kind of interim types of contracts that companies need to enter into on a regular basis to survive. Commercial lease agreements, employment agreements, vendor agreements, customer agreements, things like that. If we click into one of these vaults, you'll see that it is essentially a folder of documents that's shared between the the company and their counsel. Here we've got a bunch of different PIIAs. These are employee IP assignment agreements that probably everybody who has ever been an employee of a company has signed. And here you can actually see the recent queries that have been run by either the law firm or the company on those documents. One example of such a query is one of those data extraction tables that is kind of a bread and butter use case within Harvey. Here you can see we've got a list of those PIIAs on the left-hand side, and then each subsequent column is essentially a discrete question about an insight that we want to surface across those documents. I would have used this a lot in my practice to surface red flags across these types of agreements when I was kind of vetting agreements that the company might have put together before we became their counsel. Coming back to the main page here, I want to talk about these tools. So tools within a shared space might represent workflows that the law firm might use kind of on a regular basis, but they could also represent some kind of self-service tools for the company that the law firm puts together. The one that I want to draw your attention to is this commercial contract risk assessment workflow. Essentially, we can imagine that the company needs to enter into a bunch of commercial contracts. They might not want to involve their law firm in reviewing every single one, especially if they're pretty straightforward. So the law firm could create a workflow with prescribed rules and escalation procedures and kind of red flags assessments to kind of allow the company to determine whether they need to send something to outside counsel. So that's exactly what you'll see in this workflow. Here you can see Harvey is essentially going to take the user, in this case, someone from that startup, through essentially a set of kind of guidance and steps. So Harvey will tell the user to upload the contract. The user will comply. Harvey will ask the user if they're the customer or the purchaser, or the seller in a given deal. The user can answer, and then they can even select who their contact at the law firm is. And then Harvey will just perform this analysis to surface particular red flags exactly as prescribed by the law firm. And then at the end of this workflow, which is the kind of coolest part, is that Harvey will even escalate the red flags analysis to the law firm in the form of an email, drafted for the user to go ahead and send to the law firm. Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks so much, Maddie. What we want to call out is that what you just saw is representative of work that's happening in the transactional ecosystem and the litigation ecosystem. We're happy to share more and to field any questions from the audience. Thank you so much for listening.
First question for me is, so for legal departments, how are they going to cope with clients that potentially will have a range of these type of tools? They're going to have Harvey, they're going to have Legora, they might have Project Fortress, and before they just had email. What's the change management process there, and how are we getting them comfortable with that new world that in some ways might be a little rocky getting started?
Yeah, I think the most realistic answer is that there isn't going to be a silver bullet to not make this rocky probably in the short term. Although the counterfactual here is pretty interesting, right? The counterfactual is just the traditional way of working, where to your point, we can think of email as being this, just amorphous environment where everything gets captured. But we also have been seeing in the market that has relegated law firms to having to deliver some work that they're now leveraging AI for in the classic static traditional ways. We, in fact, think that's part of the reason why so many law firms are now fielding this question of where's the ROI? Where are our savings? Because they're not seeing a net new way that work product is being delivered. So at a minimum, even for that client that might be sitting on a stack of other tools, the fact that they now have a simple way to get into a Harvey, to start live querying, we think is an uplift. All that being said, we recognize that there's some change management of different tools emerging in the market. We hope that Harvey actually just becomes the tool, in fact, that people start gravitating around. Yesterday, we released a blog post about Gleiss Lutz and Deutsche Telekom, along with some other law firm client pairs having done exactly that.
All right, someone's saving me right here. I'm going to piggyback off this from Tamira. And so how does the data retention work from a corporate retention schedule requirement and potential legal hold requirement?
Yeah, so I think where, from a product standpoint, we realized we must err on the side of flexibility, which is to say, pretty much everything underneath this umbrella is a toggle and a lever for admin teams to decide what to do. One of the unexpected learnings we've now had in the last 60 to 90 days of kind of navigating this with pairs is there's some important conversations that just need to happen between law firm and client. We are now in this ecosystem where maybe some of the rigidity that you might have had in an engagement letter or outside counsel guidelines just doesn't quite map to this new world. So we have all the features, we kind of call it these admin handshake features that can happen as between client and law firm. We want to make that from the Harvey side as flexible as possible. But probably where the choke point in the market is right now is in how law firms should be having these conversations with their clients. And so there, what we determined was we should try to facilitate. We have collateral, the kinds of questions that a law firm might want to bring into a Zoom call or a meeting with their client to figure this out. Happy to address if there are more specific questions on this that go beyond just the answer of we make it flexible for the law firm and client to decide in any given environment what it is they want to do.
And so in another dynamic that changes here is it seems like it is possible to have sort of a real-time insight from the client into what the law firm is doing. Today, they say, hey, what's the update? And maybe we have it, maybe we have to scramble to get it. But it sets a wholly new expectation. I think you can configure it in ways to not do that, to make sure that we're pushing stuff. But we know where this could be going. This could be going into a more sort of seamless type of collaboration, which might be good in some ways, but will force law firms to be on top and maintain the record, if that's what the clients have the appetite for. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and I'm about to answer in a way where so some of the folks on the Harvey side on the marketing team might twist my arm after this. But I think the reality, and this is not a Harvey statement, I think this is broadly in the ecosystem. The way these products get marketed is necessarily with that kind of impression of both sides being dynamic. It kind of feels like Google Docs, or if you've ever been in Figma where you have the two arrows that can track each other. That is meant to connote that is now a possibility, and there might be some use case where that's appropriate. We are largely finding that in most fact patterns, that's really not what people want. So they don't necessarily want that live feed, truly dynamic, every last interaction, every last thing is visible. So to your point, Conan, we just decide to make that flexible. There's certain use cases where we've seen that actually be relevant, other use cases where it's much less relevant. So the moment the law firm uploads a virtual data room with an M&A client and maybe does an initial pass red flags review, and wants the client to be able to interact with that information, but with the understanding that the law firm still has to do their more robust diligence, okay, that's an instance where both sides might want to come in. Here's another interesting that comes up. should every question that the client asks over that data be default visible to the law firm? That then just becomes another flexible admin toggle, we've realized. And there are law firms who take a posture of, yeah, this is exactly where we can provide the most value, is to see what kind of questions are materializing. From the client side, they don't want this to be a passive kind of big brother is watching and now all of a sudden the bill starts to go up as a result. So we've made these things flexible. I think the last part of your question is just about data. So those interactions we want to feed into just kind of the same way admins can currently get data about how users are leveraging Harvey. We want to make that as rich as possible. What workflows are being run with what frequency? How many queries are coming into a review table? Maybe in some instances, those queries should actually be showcased to the law firm or the client, wherever the direction of travel might be. In other cases, it might be that it shouldn't. So that's the posture we're taking for now.
All right. I think that brings us about the time, but I'll do a quick question. What's the scheduled rollout date for shared spaces?
Yeah, so we have been in private beta, then public beta with our existing customers. This is now effectively live. So if you want to do a pair as between two Harvey customers on the law firm side and the client side, we can stand that up today. Guest accounts are in beta, but going live within the next week. So that was a question that was emerging in the chat, I think, from the client side of, oh, well, if we want to bring our law firm in, let's say the law firm is not a Harvey customer, do we have the ability to do that? You do. So if you ask your Harvey team, we can set that up Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think as a general theme, just for everybody, all the tools, I think if you hold the license, when you invite your external parties, I don't think there's any additional cost for Harvey, Fortress, or Legora. So I think we can put that one to bed. But anyway, Ryan, Maddie, thank you so much for joining us and for the video, and I'll turn it over to the Grandmaster.
Thank you, Conan. Thank you, everyone. We are now, so this just shows you how fast the industry is moving. When we ran the skills survey, law firm client collaboration wasn't a topic because there was only HighQ pretty much in that field and very few. And so Nikki is going to talk now about the things to consider when you are looking to the solution. She won't have the slide from the survey because we didn't have the survey asking about it. So Nikki, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Oz. And so different from a lot of the other areas we'll be highlighting in the series, we didn't survey the market on this one, as Oz said, because in March last year, when we were doing this survey or setting the survey up, this was not a use case that really existed yet in generative AI tools. And as we've seen in demos this morning, it's a shift towards AI collaboration that has really just happened in the last, say, 6 months. And I guess it's easy to think that this is no big deal. And Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind going into slide 1. We've seen collaboration in platforms before. We've been collaborating with clients really ever since the practice of law started. If you think about it, going back and forth on documents, testing advice, it's really just part of being a lawyer. And it's quite natural when you think of how AI platforms have developed that eventually they would evolve to develop collaboration features. If we can move into the next slide, please. But what we're seeing now is, I think, a different level of collaboration than what we've had before. It's an evolution, which really means it's not just an evolution of collaboration, it's an evolution of the place where client service delivery is happening. And if you think about how this has evolved over time, for most of the history of law, client service delivery happened through unstructured communications. And of course, that's still where a lot of it happens. So flat, linear exchanges initiated by individuals, emails from the 90s onwards, messaging, calls, etc. Then in approximately the mid-2000s, we started seeing a little bit more structured delivery through client portals. And there are a number of providers that have been in that space and a number of use cases that have been addressed through client collaboration portals. And this changed things in the sense that it really offered centralized access. But it was still kind of limited interaction. It was more about things being pushed from one side to the other. So law firms pushing WIP or documents or visibility rather than shared work so much. What we're seeing now, which is new, is effectively AI-mediated collaboration. So where work happens in shared environments and work can be iterative as a result of those environments. So clients and lawyers interacting within the same system. And where I think we're going to be heading almost certainly is towards agent-mediated delivery, which is obviously still just emerging, but where systems execute some of the workflows and lawyers supervise those systems. And where clients increasingly interact directly with AI systems, but again, supervised by lawyers. So from communication to execution. If we can move into the next slide. And I guess if you're thinking about the providers that have had this kind of surface area for collaboration and delivery over the years, if you think about email and phone, it's pretty obvious. And in fact, I think one of the interesting things here is that if you speak to IT teams about collaboration, what they think collaboration means from a tech perspective is Cisco, right? They think of it in terms of kind of hardcore infrastructure that allows for meeting collaboration. For Portal, we saw Loophole and various other providers, even NetDocuments providing kind of portal type functionality, Moxtra, and we saw some of the transaction management platforms that often also offered collaboration. So Legatix and of course Project Fortress started, in fact, as transaction management. Also Opus 2 as kind of litigation management, but with client portal functionality. And then now we're moving towards some of the platforms that we saw today, as well as a few others that are moving into the AI collaboration space. And if you look at agent mediated, it's not yet clear who that will be, but I mean, given recent announcements, it could well be Anthropic, right? And it could also be some of the players that we saw demo today as they gradually evolve their platforms even further. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the shift in where client delivery takes place, the reason that is important is not just because the platform changes, but because it also changes the way that work gets done. So before, where it may have been a client emails a request, lawyer drafts a document, sends a version to the client, and then feedback occurs, but it's back and forth. Now you have a system where both lawyers and clients have access to the same AI features and the ability to deploy workflows and really iterate within documents at the same time. So it can look like this, like client inputs request into a shared system. Potentially, in some cases, AI generates the structured first output, or there's a workflow that happens, and then the client and the lawyer can iterate in real time. So that's a very different kind of workflow. And it means work can get done better and more efficiently as long as it's secure, as long as there is, as some of you have already discussed, that kind of supervising of output from the AI as well. But some of the meeting time that would have been taken up previously by discussing how to modify a document, for example, or a deliverable, gets moved into the collaboration portal and real-time work. Next slide. So even though it might feel like a client portal is just a client portal, if these kind of shared spaces offer true collaboration, it really can change things quite fundamentally. And final slide. So a few things to look for if you are looking at these kinds of things and wondering what questions to ask. Obviously, a true collaboration platform, so one where it's not one-sided and it's not the firm just pushing things, it's actually something where you can work iteratively and collaboratively. Ideally, the ability to kind of co-develop workflows and automations, and ideally to even edit established workflows upon feedback from client, mutual access to AI features within the portal, insights delivery, so the ability to audit and track what kinds of requests are coming in, the ability to ultimately offer a kind of self-serve capability for clients that is supervised or verified, and of course, various admin and security features that are critical here. And of course, on Legal Tech Hub, we're going to be putting up a more comprehensive guide with more detail on what to look out for from this type of feature specifically. But question for you, and I think this is the point where we really turn it over to all of you for discussion. How attractive is this kind of feature, especially when you think about the issues around law firm visibility and control and security, that kind of notion of allowing clients to be in your AI platforms? Is that something that you're interested in, or is it frightening? And also curious to know whether your clients are asking for it yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. And before you guys start answering, we're going to say thank you for the vendors who presented and shared. This was great, and we really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to have 5 demonstrations. Many of them are going to be new faces to the Colorado meeting that you are at. So that was really great. And we're going to stop the recording now and start the conversation.